All financial support for this podcast comes from my patrons on patreon.com. If you'd like to join in with the patrons, please check out patreon.com/DarwinGrosse. That's DarwinGrosse. Now enjoy the podcast. Okay, today I have the great opportunity to have a chat with somebody. We've actually been interacting for quite a while, but we finally were able to get our schedules in sync. Today I'm talking to Panic Girl. Panic Girl is her actual name, Martha Bahr. But if you run across her work online, it'll be under the name Panic Girl. She's just had a couple of really great releases. And I've been listening to them all morning, getting ready for this discussion. So that's great. We'll talk a bit about that. But also she has a very interesting and active YouTube channel, and she does some live performance, which we'll talk about as well. So with no further ado, let's say hello to Panic Girl, Martha Bahr. Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here. I'm all right. I'm glad we were finally able to get our schedules together. We've been talking about doing this for like a year and a half. It's crazy.
Yes, quite a while.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I think when we first started talking about it, it was like right before you were going to do a virtual super booth performance or something. You know, it was in the middle of that COVID hellhole. But, you were still finding a way to get out there and perform, which I just really, really appreciated. So for the listeners, why don't we start off by having you tell us what you think of as your body of work?
My main work, I would say, is my work at the broadcast station here in Munich. That's my day job, where I compose for radio features. Like, for example, radio features for children or politics or anything. If anyone likes to book us in the radio, they can do it. It doesn't matter what topic it is. And that's a very, very interesting work because it's way different than composing as Panic Girl, because I have to compose to this topic. Like, for example, one of my first features was about death explained to children. Very difficult for me to start off this kind of job. But it was so interesting. And the first drafts, I had just to throw them in the bin because they were too much for this topic. And I had to go way more light on that, so it wouldn't get too dark, for example. Yeah, but that's a very interesting line of work. And then I'm also having my music, my compositions as Panic Girl. They're quite different, obviously. Right. I'm doing ambient and electronica music and performing live whenever I have the chance. With COVID, of course, opportunities weren't too many out there. But as you mentioned, some online performances and stuff like that. And then I'm also a writer for a German print magazine, Sound and Recording, where I get to, for example, write reviews on modules, Eurorack modules, or depends on, for example, about a synthesizer plugin that could do interesting surround sounds, binaural sounds as well. Like that very much too, to just dig into different, modules and plugins I didn't know before. I'm also very active on social media, on YouTube, as you mentioned, Facebook, Instagram, and doing my little videos there where I show what gear I use at the moment to create my music. And that's very much fun too.
All right, so it's fair to say that one of the things that's not part of your thing is sleeping. It doesn't sound like you're giving yourself any opportunity to take a break whatsoever.
It sounds like it, but I don't know why, but it was very clear for me from the beginning that I wanted to have a variety of jobs. I didn't want to have like a 9-to-5 job where I had to do the same stuff over and over again. That is, I guess, very rewarding too to other people. But I always like the challenges, adventures, digging into new stuff, trying out new opportunities. I always also like very much when companies approach me with new projects, new ideas. Yeah, it's quite busy, but I sleep. I do sleep.
Okay. Well, the thing that I love hearing though too is that just because you're getting some attention for your YouTube channel, for example, you're not trying to just like make a living off of being an influencer or something like that. And in fact, I was really engaged by your YouTube channel because it was like a very personal thing, right? You're like, well, here's what I'm doing now, and oh, I got this new thing, and I just plugged it in, and it sounded so cool. I just wanted to, it's
To share it, yeah.
yeah, to share it. It's interesting because there's never a sense that you're pushing it. In fact, like the last person that needs, like a salesperson is Peter Blasser, right? Nobody, he doesn't have any problem selling the Coca Quantas. So, but it's cool that you're out there showing people how you use this stuff for yourself. That's cool.
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is to just stay myself because otherwise it doesn't make sense, not to me and not to the viewers or listeners, and just to show what I'm excited about. And there are many people who are, love Eurek modules, Eurek synthesizers, or like to learn by watching other people patching. I think you really can see it right away if someone wants to sell something or just shows you what
Right.
you like. So
Now, your most recent release, I think, is the Washed Ashore
exactly,
album, right? Yeah. Can you tell
exactly,
me a
yeah.
little bit about that? It's interesting because I got certainly tastes of that when I was watching the videos. You were showing some of how some of those sounds were made, but this is a very interesting collection.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity actually because Moog approached me last year for the Super Booth Festival in Messe in Berlin that I visit every year actually because I really love the vibe there. And yeah, and then Moog approached me and asked me if I would like to do a live performance for them. And the nice thing or the challenging thing as well was that they sent me a bunch of synthesizers for that performance, and I had about 3 or 4 weeks to learn those synthesizers and then play live with them. So that was pretty short notice, but they wanted exactly to see what I and the other performers could do with those synthesizers in such a short time. And it was really, really great. It was I got the Moog Matriarch and the Sound Studio, so the Subharmonicon, the Mother 32, and the DFAM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I composed, I think, 45-minute set for them. And I really loved playing those synthesizers. I don't know, I didn't have a Moog actually beforehand at my studio. Of course, I know the sound, and many friends of mine and colleagues have Moog synthesizers. And since I had them here in my studio, I don't want to give them ever away again. It's just, especially the Mother 32 for bass sounds. Wow. I just plug it in and it just works. It doesn't depend on the song or genre. It always works somehow. I don't know. It's just magic with Moog and the Matriarch. It's so smooth and creamy and in its sound and the delay and it's just amazing. I
Yeah,
love
that's
them.
that's great. It's funny because um, I've kind of a long time back I had some Moogs, but I never was able to afford a mini Moog, and so when this new series of the most recent kind of series of Moogs came up, I bought one too. It was my first like kind of premium Moog machine, and
Which
my
one did
goodness,
you get?
I ended up getting the Subsequent 37
Ah, nice.
just because. I happen to like the look of it. I mean, I am really influenced by the look of a synthesizer, drawing me into using a synthesizer,
Absolutely.
and so it just happened to just like really capture my attention from the look of it, and I have just really been enjoying it. But in a similar way, it sort of seems like you can kind of turn it on, and no matter what you're trying to accomplish, it just is like right under your fingers. It's amazing.
It's really, really amazing.
Yeah. So, man, I already have a bunch of questions, but before we get there, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about your background. One of the things I like doing for the people that I talk to is learn a little bit about their background. Now, you have revealed a bunch of stuff I didn't even know. I didn't realize that you were working with this radio composition work. I had no idea you were involved with sound and recording, it's like whenever I go to Germany, it's just like I'll stop at the first newsstand and get it. I can't understand a word of it, but there's just like something about the presentation that always captures my attention, right? But also all the other stuff. Where are you coming from? How do you get to become the artist that you are and like this multifaceted person? Was and like what were some of the who were some of the people that influenced you to become what you are?
So I think I knew I wanted to be involved in music actually very, very young, at 4 or 5 years. I was just so fascinated by music, by the by the medium, that I knew I want to spend my life with it. It was pretty much clear to me back then already. And then I made music my whole life in one way or the other. I started playing the piano and played a bit of guitar. I was in the school choir for quite a while, for many years. That was very fun too. And then I started playing in a band where I played guitar and I sang. And there, the our bass player, he told me about the School of Audio Engineering (SAE), which is worldwide, and there was
Right.
also one in Munich. And he just told me that there is this program, this course, audio engineering course, and I knew right away. I just listened to him, and I knew, oh, okay, that's exactly what I want to do. And back then I was actually studying at the university. It was history and German. And I just ran to my parents and said, I have to stop studying and start with the School of Audio Engineering. And my parents just saw my eyes just sparkling and my enthusiasm. And yeah, they went with me with this decision and supported me because the school, you had to pay for it monthly as well.
Right.
And yeah, and then I could start really this course, this audio engineering course, and then it just went from there. Actually, with the with all the connections I made there, the teachers, with some of them I'm still friends, as well as I actually after this course I started working there as well. I think I was one of the first women there to work with all those guys. That was a funny time.
Yeah.
That was the only school as well which had an automat. I don't know the English word where you can not only where you could get your coffee from this automat or some Coke or
Right.
something to like those drinks, soft drinks, but also beer.
Oh.
a whole automat only for beer. That's Bavaria as well, but it was a very very funny time, and uh, and I learned so much there because I started out as a tutor, and then I also got to teach lessons for the students, and then I also became a course leader is the word, I guess, of for a whole for the electronic music producer
Oh,
course.
right. Yeah.
And just every day getting all those questions asked all the time. How does that work? Why does that not work? How do I solve that problem? And yeah, I had to solve those problems always on my own. That's just It was important for everyone who worked there that, yeah, to just get the answers as fast as possible to the students. And it was such a good time for me to learn how to solve problems, where to get the answers from, and just get, yeah, some knowledge, a knowledge base for me. And then after that, I started working at a student radio station, which was also very fun time and very creative staff there and working, all those live sessions also with bands and yeah, learning all the equipment, which was of course totally different than to a recording studio, having to broadcast. And after that, I got to the big broadcast, the public broadcast station, Bayerischer Rundfunk, in Munich, where I still work. And yeah, and I always enjoyed this, the challenges as mentioned. And yeah, back in the school, I also read regularly the Sound and Recording magazine. And I just thought I'll just write them and ask if they would like to try with me as a writer for them. And yeah, they just said, okay, just send us a test article. And if we like it, we continue. And if not, we don't. And they liked it, fortunately.
Had you done any writing before that other than just like school papers and stuff?
Never,
No.
actually, no. But it was very different and very rewarding kind of work as well. I know I started out with this series, Sound Pioneers. My first article was on Vangelis,
All right.
where I'm a big fan of. And yeah, it was great researching all those sound pioneers which influenced, the whole recording industry. And after that, I think I did a little bit of remix work too, here and there. I tried also, live mixing for several times, but that wasn't for me. So I stopped that. And then I started, of course, during all the time, my music as Panic Girl, composing all the time also for myself, actually. And yeah, that was always a big part of my life too.
So now, one of the things I would say when I listen to your music, it is really quite composed and very melodic, right? And it's actually kind of stands out because you are very upfront about using modular systems and using like the Octatrack and using a 2600 and a bunch of this stuff. But your music is still remains very melodic. Now, nothing about your background other than I guess being like in a choral group really kind of points to that musical background. I mean, did you take like lessons and stuff like that? Did you study music in any formal way? Or was it just more self learning and learning what it is that you liked?
I learned the piano for several years, so I got a little bit of
Yeah.
background there, and 1 or 2 years of guitar lessons. But other than that, I didn't study music, so the rest is self-taught, I guess, and listening, of course, to the music I love, my
Right.
heroes. Like I was always a big fan, for example, of Pink Floyd, which
Mm,
influenced me a lot. I always try to get the minimalism of Pink Floyd, which I really adore, but still getting so much feeling and atmosphere in their music, but with very minimalistic compositions. That's one thing I always have somewhere in my head while composing, or Massive Attack, which got me into electronic music in the beginning with their album Mezzanine. In the beginning, I always tried to get this bit of the dark vibe of it, and yeah, tried to copy them as much
It's
as I
it's
could,
really
actually.
interesting you say that. There are so many people I know that if you like corner them and ask them for their three most influential albums, two of them will be just completely random, and the third will always be that Massive Attack album. It was so influential to so many people.
very iconic. It's
Yeah.
I still love it. And then I also, that's maybe I guess a little bit unusual for electronic musician, I guess, the band Tool.
Oh yeah.
Uh, what I loved about them very much and still do is their how they play with rhythms, especially. And also their mixing style, because back in the days when I was listening to them very on a daily basis, actually, I read that they like, for example, mix the vocal like an instrument, not as in pop music where the vocal is way up front, but really like the guitar and the other instruments very equally. And I love that idea. And I always try that with my music too. When I'm singing, I'm not always singing on my tracks. And also the all those polyrhythmic stuff going on. It's crazy what they're doing, and I will never get it the way they do, but I always have it somewhere in my head while composing.
Yeah, well, you cracked the door open there on something that a couple of things I wanted to talk about. But one of them specific is your use of voice. You're one of the few people who will have a microphone and a modular system in the same room. So, and but your voice really, in the context that you use it, sometimes you sing lyrics, but always it has the sort of like this ethereal sense of being one of the instruments in the composition.
Exactly. That's the influence of Tool,
Yeah.
where I don't like to put myself way up front, but equally with the instruments. I think synthesizer and the voice, they all should be, all should get some the same attention.
So, what made you want to incorporate voice into your music? I mean, again, it's not something a lot of synthesis do. Is there something particular about the timbre of the voice that really works for you? Do you like the sound of it in combination, or is there a kind of communication that you get with your voice that you just can't get with a synthesizer?
All of those 3 points,
Oh,
I guess.
okay.
I also think the voice is the most personal way to translate your feelings, to get your message across, I guess, because you can, shape all those tones and words exactly how you want it. And it was always, I think, with my musical background or my musical idols, like Pink Floyd, they have a singer, Tool has a singer, Massive Attack, they also use guest singers very often. So I think that was just those idols who influenced me. So I also wanted to incorporate my voice. Yeah, and with the ambient music I'm doing without voice, I guess it's the influence of YouTube and Instagram and all this community online with the modular community where ambient is more present without
Right,
voice.
right.
And so I got to love that too a lot. And yeah, I wanted to try that. And it's fun too. It's just quite different, but it's very relaxing also not to use the voice, I guess.
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me is actually the tones that you choose with your synthesizer are often very voice-like. And so then when you bring your voice in, the combination, it's a very conducive fit between the sounds, right? But it also, the other thing I would say is that you are not shy about using effects. Every everything you do is really heavily wrapped in effects to the point where I would say that effects probably make up more of your sound design than even synthesis.
Yeah, that could actually, as you say it, be quite true. Yes, I love effects. I like very much also having multiple effects on one synth voice
Right,
just to get to experiment more what you could do. I also love pure synthetic voices, synthesizer voices. For example, the triangle or sine waves are my favorite ones,
mm,
but I always love to see what you can do with it. Experiment, just like a big bit crusher, and then also a reverb or delay, of course, and then maybe some different wave shaping devices, and to see where it gets me. And Yeah, sometimes it's quite heavy, I guess, but it's very fun. It's just very fun to use.
Yeah, well, when I kind of watch your videos like from oldest to newest, what was interesting is that there wasn't necessarily a lot of variety in the voices. Like, I mean, like the verbose harmonic oscillator has like been in your system the whole time, right? And similarly, the mutable instruments oscillator.
I have several, yes,
Yeah,
the rings and plates and
yeah, but it's like these are things that kind of like live throughout. What I did see change a lot was your use of the effects that you chose, right? Is a lot of times you'd have delays and stuff, but then later on I saw sort of like some Strymon stuff show up,
yes.
and then also using some external devices then, and also you also were using you use the Octatrack a lot, especially in live situations, and I assume that you're using the effects in that as well. And so you really
I
just
do.
have a lot of dimensions of effects that your system is working with. When you do voice, do you run the voice into the modular, or do you have a separate effects setup for that, specific for that?
Usually I have it separately
Okay,
from the modular.
yeah. So that's interesting, but also it was one of the things that was really remarkable to me was you did a video of sort of like, hey, let's build a patch from scratch, and you have like a two-row modular, and there was practically no synthesis stuff on there. There was a mimeophone, there was a morphogene, there was
Ah, yes,
a,
that one. Hmm.
yeah, there was a mixer, and you're very active in doing real time mixing of stuff, right? But a lot of sound manipulators, and it was like one oscillator, two oscillators,
Exactly,
very
yeah, yeah.
simple. And then the other thing that I noticed was that you actually have a lot of different ways to do sequencing. And it was one of the things when I first started listening to your music, and again, I knew that you were using a modular system, but I was like, man, you are running a lot of different independent lines and you're bringing them in and out in a very organic fashion. But like, how do you do that with a system? And then I take a look at your machine. And it's like half of your system is sequencers of one sort or another. You have a Renee, you have a Hermod, you have a yarns that is you're using the internal sequencing on that. You have the command center. Is that what it's called?
Ground control
Ground control.
also.
That's the one. Yeah. You
Many
know,
sequencers,
yeah, you have
yes.
sequencers just like falling from the sky. But I can see now, I mean, I can see where that becomes a really important part of your thing because that allows you all of these independent lines that you can develop.
Exactly. And also I'm always in the search for the perfect sequencer, which will in the end replace all others. But it's
Good
very
luck.
exactly. That's really hard, hard goal to to go for.
Sure.
But yeah, but for example, the Renee, I love it for its experimental side, where you can program in the notes that you want to have played, but you have no idea in which order the notes will be played. That was actually one of the first modules in my system that really blew me away because I didn't know that concept before.
Hmm.
So I really can recommend that to anyone who would like to go in that direction. And then, for example, the Dobos sequencer, that's a touch plate sequencer where I can play live a lot, no, just by not programming it, but playing arpeggios or just in the moment, whatever melody comes to mind. And it's very nice to play it with those touch plates. It's very fun. And then the ground control, that's actually my favorite at the moment because it has so many different features and this little keyboard on the module itself. And you can also have arpeggios played and also your sequences programmed, and it's very versatile. So that's actually something I was looking for so long, and I so far I'm very happy. The Hermod actually I was very happy with it in the beginning, but for me, the programming is just it's
That display is very difficult to work
yes.
with too. It's so small.
That for one thing, and the menu, maybe it's not for me. I know
Yeah,
other people love it to death and
I know,
they
right?
only use it, but for me it's just I don't know. I don't connect with it too much. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, the yarns module, which is actually MIDI interface and only and has this extra feature of the sequencer, which I totally love, and it's not intuitive at all. But I still love it. I have no idea why, but it's really, and it also has internal oscillators. That's really one great module to have. And yeah, I use it very, very often. But yeah, I'm always trying sequencers. But with the ground control, as mentioned, I think maybe I found it.
Oh, that's
I hope
cool.
so.
Well, I'll tell you one of the nice things about it is having that keyboard. There's something about having whatever your interaction be actually embedded in the rack somehow makes the whole thing seem more like an instrument, right?
Absolutely, yes. I
Yeah.
also have the Arturia keyboard, the external, which I sometimes take with me because it's very light and has the CV out and gate out on the back, which is very handy to have. But now with the keyboard on the ground control, I can leave it at home. That's also always one goal to, especially for live performances, to have it as small as
Right.
possible.
Have as few things to carry as possible. Right.
Yes, exactly.
Well, one of the things though that I mean, I think every time I saw a performance of you live, you always have the Octatrack. And what does the Octatrack mean for you? I mean, what are the things that you use it for in your live set?
So I think always using it actually as a playback device because in my music I really love layering sounds and for example having multiple instruments playing the same melody
Mm,
and also using field recordings very very often and manipulating them as well or I also like having kind of classic instruments like strings,
oh, right.
piano,
Right.
cello sometimes accompany the synthesizer lines. And for that, I always have the Octatrack with me because, yeah, it's very hard for me to go to just have less melodies or less tracks playing, and that's what I'm using the Octatrack for. I know it's actually you can do so much more with it, but yeah, it's doing its job great for me. I didn't want to take the laptop with me because my laptop is too old now, and my studio computer I can take it on stage with me, and I also like to have it without a screen actually on stage where I don't have to look in it. So that's why I chose the Octatrack.
Got it. Well, it's interesting though that you say that you don't use all the things. I mean, I have tried a couple of times to get into the Octatrack and it's never worked. But the reason is because I'm too influenced by people who use it for everything and do everything all the time. And to me, that sort of busyness actually makes me not enjoy playing. and so I find it very frustrating. And like a good friend of mine is just a wizard at it, right? He's doing trig locks all over the place and doing alternate firings and stuff. And it just makes my head spin. I don't find that kind of thing works in a live performance. I actually really like doing the kinds of things that you do, which is this idea of having multiple things going, and but a lot of what you're doing in real time, in addition to starting and stopping different things from happening, is very carefully mixing things in. I think so often people with modular systems they sort of like they buy 300 cables. They make sure they use all 300 of them, and then make a tremendous noise, and that's what gets shipped out of the machine. And I always feel like there's so much subtlety and so much beauty that just comes from having a mixer that you can manipulate in real time. That's a huge way of playing, and that's something that you do like constantly. When I watch you play, you're always playing that mixer.
That's true. That's also one thing which I read so often in like mixing books or articles on mixing, that the most important thing actually is getting the volumes right. You can avoid so many plugins in your mix by having the volumes right in the beginning. And I noticed that still in my mixes sometimes, that I just want to use an equalizer right away or a compressor or something, and then and then I say to myself, wait a second, just check the volumes first, and then it solved itself. It's so simple. It sounds so like such a beginner's trick, but it's still true. And yeah, and I really like also like yeah, having all those sounds coming in and out a bit, and changing the volume of one sound can change the dynamics of the whole piece also so very much. And as you mentioned, the subtleties as well, because especially with my ambient tracks and also with the Moog set that I played last year for Superbooth, which I enjoy most in this kind of music at the moment, is having my tracks unsynced as much as possible. I like to sync, yeah, almost nothing if possible, and playing around with the volumes and then seeing how those different melodies flowed in and out. And yeah, and by those combinations of those melodies, they always sound somehow different, although they're always the same lines in this, especially in this one piece. I don't know if you get what I mean, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's still always changing because they're
right,
not synced actually.
right. Yeah. Well, actually, in the one thing that you showed, you actually you even had a tape loop running that was just all part of the whole desynchronized
Exactly.
melange. And again, the manipulation of bringing different sounds in and out was really the compositional movement. And movement seems to be actually kind of a trait of your music. Is that it's never jarring, but there's always change happening. And I think that's what makes it very enjoyable to listen to.
Oh, thank you.
Because like I look at this Washed Ashore album, and I mean some of these tracks are 12 or 13 minutes long. It can be hard to hold a listener's attention for that, but you do a very masterful job. And again, I think it's largely because it has almost as much to do with mixing as it does with sound design.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Um, so we talked about your live stuff, and the live stuff really has a significant place in your body of work. But there's a couple of instruments that, from what I can tell, primarily only exist in your studio. And one is the Coco Quantus, and it looks like also you got a Citrax organ recently. So with the Sit Lombard stuff. What is it that draws you to that? And also, again, you play those things very different than almost everyone else I've heard. Everybody else I heard tends to use them as sort of like chaotic noise machines. And instead, you have a tendency to make them little playable surfaces that are very tuneful. How hard is it to do that? and, uh, and what is it that draws you to those instruments?
I think what drew me to them, I have a friend of mine, Anna Toloka, with whom I play as Lucid Grain too. And he always comes to my studio. We are jamming a bit, and then he has this new little wonderful instruments which he brings by, and then I'm totally teased by them. And that was, for example, the Coco Quantus. So he bought it first, and I saw it already on the internet and on several YouTube channels and so on. And I love the look as well, very much of it. This wooden instrument, I really love the look and the feel of it. but I thought it's not really for me because I think the original intent of this instrument is to use it as a chaotic noise device, actually. And yeah, it wasn't for me, as far as I could tell from the YouTube videos. And then this friend of mine came by, and also tends to more melodic work, more melodic music. And then, yeah, I got more interested, and then I asked him if I could maybe borrow it for one week or two. And yeah, then I was in love with it and had to buy one myself. I also like that every Coco Quantus or Seed Drugs or all those wooden instruments by Seat Lombard are different because they're using multiple wood types in their instruments, and they don't place it on the same place, all those different wood types, so they actually look different, every single instrument. That's also something that I love about them very much. As you mentioned, I use them more melodically. I think it's actually, if you get a short introduction on the functionalities, on the basic ones, how to record something into it, how to modulate the sound a bit, then it is quite easy to use, because yeah, you put your input source into the Coco Quantus, record it, and then you can play it back, the small, very short loop, and then you can modulate it, the forward backward function,
Right.
and also the starting, that it jumps back to the starting point. And that's just experimentation, and it really fits well in my music at the moment, because it's not synced how I use it, as all my other instrument and melodies, which I also like to not sync to the rest if possible. And yeah, I think the most difficult part is to get the timings, the time right of the different melodies, that it doesn't sound like, oops, she did forget to sync, to, oh
Right.
wow, it's polyrhythm or something like that. That's always this, yeah, that's I think the most difficult part, to get that right. But I use it so often that I know already. For example, sometimes like to have a pulsing sound that is, the main tempo, the felt main tempo of the track, and then maybe an arpeggiated sound that is way faster, so the ear doesn't try to fit it into the more slow pulsing sound. For example, that's always one thing I'm doing to make it way faster, some sounds and maybe some melodies which are not present all the time, but more like long, like string sounds, for example, which don't have to be in time as well, but just, float in and float out from time to time. So, and with the Coco Quantas, it's always a little bit of experimentation, what works, what doesn't work, what timing especially. And yeah, and all those crackling noises of that machine is just, I really love it. I have an engineer friend who just, was face palming when he heard, why are you doing that? You have all those digital clean synthesizer sounds, and he is he's a mixer as well, and tries to get those mixes very clean and exact and so on. And he just listened to my, all those crackling noises, and which I love so much.
Yeah.
And he couldn't understand it at all, but yeah, that's just, I guess, preference.
Well, I mean, in a way, when you have the ability to make everything crystal clear, all of a sudden those crackles become very much a thing, an organic sound that you start to crave. I'll never forget the first time I heard a Pole album, right? And it had that in the crackling and the noise from his misoperating filter, right? He had a filter that had gone bad, and it made all these clicky, crackly sounds. And I was just like, oh my God, that sounds so great. I don't know.
I
Maybe
love that too.
maybe it throws us back to prehistoric days when we sat around a fire or something. I don't know.
Maybe, yes. Yeah, you're true. Yeah, that's true.
So our time is almost up, but there is one other thing I wanted to learn about your music because it's unclear to me. A lot of your music has a percussive background, but I'm curious what you use because I noticed that in some of your modular pictures, you have some percussive modules, but you also show that sometimes you have a Jomox drum machine. And again, the Octatrack rears its capabilities of potentially being able to sort. Where are the rhythms produced in your music?
I often like to use for percussive sounds the plates module from Mutable Instruments, but more those very tonal, percussive,
Mm,
soft sounds like, yeah, trianglish sounds, I guess. And then yeah, the Jomox I'm using too, but more for my electronica tracks. But I really like the sound, especially that was actually my first modular gig at Super Booth. I think 2017 or something like that. And I had my modular and my Jomox on stage. I played with a friend. He also had some gear with him, and I remember exactly the first time in that gig where I played the first bass drum on this huge PA, and it just I thought, shit, did something break? Sorry, but it was really, it almost sounded distorted a bit, and it's so loud and heavy. It has such a beautiful subby sound to it, and it just blew me away. And it just, in that moment, my inner child just came up and said, louder, louder. You know, when you when you're a little child, you just want to have it as loud as possible, and all the neighborhood people should hear it. That was so cool. And that's why I love the Jomox. I can really recommend it for live performances if you want to have that heavy bass sound. And then I also very much like to program my percussive sounds and drum sounds in my DAW first, and maybe play it back via the Octatrack. And there I am very much like to use also like field recordings
mm,
for those kind of sounds. Like several years ago, I don't know how I came up with that idea. I think I read an article about that or something like that. For example, when you close a window, it makes this thumpy, I don't know how to describe it, very subby sound like a kick drum,
right.
which I really liked, and I love using that as well for kick drums, for example. Or I also found this library, the sample library online, that was made out of wood sounds only, but used as percussive sounds, like, you know, when you have a branch,
Oh
for
yeah.
example,
Yeah.
that you are breaking, and that's beautiful percussive sounds. Or a little bit the rustling of leaves. You can make like shaker like sounds, for example. Or yeah, there are many ways to use it creatively. And I think I'm just working with it differently. If I know it's field recordings, that's just way more fun to use than in my tracks, instead of, you know, loading up the 50th sound of a hi-hat sample, which are
Yeah, it's having
beautiful
fun.
too, but I like the variety there, I
I
guess.
hear you. Yeah. Well, Martha, this has been a fabulous chat. I thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Before we leave, for people who want to learn more about your work, where's the best place for them to look?
I'm most active on Instagram. My handle there is panic.girl.666, just because Panic Girl was taken.
Okay.
And then I'm also, yeah, on YouTube as well, and Facebook and TikTok as well online. And yeah, Bandcamp, there is my music for anyone who wants to listen to it.
Yeah, on Bandcamp, it's under the label IUE.
Exactly, yeah. That's my label.
Yeah, I, the letter U, the word we, and then is it IUE Music?
I think IUE Records.
IUE Records. Okay, great. Well, it's a great opportunity for people to just take a listen to what you do, but also be able to support you as well. So, fabulous. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, and it was just really great talking to you.
It was very much fun. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay, many thanks to Martha, Panic Girl, for having the great chat. It was really interesting to hear not only how she approaches working with her voice, but with her modular, how the two interweave, how she chooses the modules that she builds her cases off of. Very interesting stuff. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Very, very intriguing bunch of information in there. I want to thank everybody for their help via Patreon. The patrons have been really helpful in terms of keeping this podcast going. But I'm going to give my patrons a little warning here. Unfortunately, due to some health concerns, I'm going to have to take an extra week off this coming week. So we'll still have 2 podcasts this month, but unfortunately they're going to be spread a little bit wider. But other than that, I want to thank you all for listening, and thank you all for being supportive. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop me a line at darwin.gross@gmail.com, ddg@cycling74.com, or ddg@darwingross.com. All right, bye.